I'm Jennifer Iriwn, author of Address the Color of the Sky, and you're watching The Shadows Project.
In this episode, I chat with LA-based New Yorker Jennifer Iriwn about her intriguing debut novel, Address the Color of the Sky, a raw and honest insight into the rehabilitation of an amazing character with a really cool name.
When I picked it up, I read the first bit and I thought it was going to be like an erotic tale. It's not my normal. It's not my regular.
It's not at all.
Yeah, I don't normally read them things anyway. But then,
I know. Honestly, when I was I take courses and whatnot, and I ran my first 10 pages by an agent back in the very beginning, and she was like, "You need to have her desperate, show her desperate state, have her having sex on the plane, have her hitting on the driver on the way to rehab." So those additions were, at the suggestion of an agent. And I always wonder, like, when people first pick this book up, they're like, what the?
Yeah.
Is that a Rolex? Do you have a Rolex? What kind of watch is that?
Oh, no, this time is a Rolex.
That's a really nice watch.
Yeah.
My son's about to graduate from college, and I've been looking at used watches.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't even, it's insane how much watches are.
Yeah, definitely. Some lovely one. I love the Tag Heuer.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm gonna actually look at those. The Tag Heuer, however you say it. Those are great watches too.
So you're in Palm Springs now, yeah? When I went there, I just saw loads of like grandmas running around. They were like 90 years old with tracksuits on.
Oh yeah, no, it's like hot gay men now.
Oh yeah, okay.
And a lot of lesbians.
Okay. I'm not gonna ask why you're there, but
it's kind of it's actually gotten really chic and there's a lot of mid-century modern. I actually rented this house. It's a mid-century modern house and has like very, stark interior, but like very cool chairs, and the landscaping's very kind of rocky and zen, and it's kind of like where Prudence went to rehab.
Yeah. Just to put it into context for people when they're watching, can we just like start just by talking about the book, and then we'll talk about you and your sort of inspiration behind it. So that I found that, like we said, it starts off and it looks kind of light. Yeah, she's joining the Mile High Club on a plane. It's quite. I don't know if she's already joined, but she's having sex with someone on a plane. It's quite light at the start, quite funny,
right?
In parts, it's just like the guy offers to buy it, tries to insist on buying her a drink after he's had sex with her to kind of pay for the sex.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she sees herself as that. She has such low self-esteem when she's checking in. Did you read the whole book?
Yeah. So it goes through into the rehab, into Serenity
Hills. Yeah.
And then we start going back into her childhood, the psychology behind her behavior.
Yeah.
So can you just talk about the plot without giving too much away? Okay,
so Address the Color of the Sky. I call it Girl Interrupted meets Orange is the New Black. It's the story, half the story takes place in Prudence Aldrich, the protagonist's childhood, and it goes back and forth in time, and she's in rehab for sex addiction. And it's a very, it starts out a little shocking, but it's a poignant story about healing from childhood trauma, how your childhood shapes and molds who you are as a person. There's the cast of characters in rehab. And although at first you may not like Prudence Aldrich, all my readers end up really rooting for her and caring for her, and wanting to know how she fares in the world after she checks out of rehab. And for anyone curious about what it's like to be in rehab, what people go through, the journey of healing from any kind of trauma, to childhood or adult, anything, traumatic experience, this book tells it in a very light, easy manner that at first might be a little shocking, but as you get a little deeper in the story, you'll see that there's so many wonderful, poignant moments in which you root for the protagonist and all the characters that are in rehab trying to change their lives.
Mm-hmm. So like when she first goes, when it starts off in the present and then it goes back in time, it shifts between times, and it goes back to her childhood with the ducks, yeah, her father and the ducks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This reminded me of The Sopranos. You know, have you ever watched The Sopranos?
No, I actually didn't, but that scene was true.
This is what set up like his anxiety when the ducks flew away, you know, at the start. So I was thinking of this because it was like psychology. I didn't think you'd stole it. I just thought, you know. But yeah, it started. So it goes back, and she has to mother and father separating. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to the pain, no matter how old you are, of your parents getting a divorce. And many of us have had to endure that and get through that, and our parents fighting over us, or us feeling uncomfortable with their new girlfriends or husbands or boyfriends or whatever. How that tears a child and kind of has an effect on how they see love and how they see commitment and relationships. And I wanted to have that after a shocking beginning to the book. I wanted to have a poignant moment and show Prudence's strength for her older brother, how she is there for him, cares for him, and the sadness that she's endured that is so relatable to so many people. And I actually did have ducks and had to set them free. And it's one of the memories that I have that told me life is about to change and I don't know what's down the road. As a little kid, that's really scary because kids love routine, you know? So that's kind of the way that I wanted that scene to come across.
Yeah, because like when I was reading it, I always have this like sort of idea with addiction. You know, what's wrong with addiction? Sometimes, you know, like I say, if people want to drink, they should just drink, and like heavily. If they want to drink and then die when they're 65, but if they're happy doing this, they should do it. So something like sex, obviously, as long as you're, you know, safe sex, it should be okay. But I was questioning, you know, what's wrong with addiction? Why are people so against it?
Right.
In a weird way. But then when you read, like, which is nearly always the case, traumatic experiences happen to people in the past, and this happens. It goes back to when she was a teenager with the twins, sort of like this terrible scene happens with.
Yeah. So I started writing the book when I was going through a divorce. And I wanted to know why I chose the wrong person and didn't want to make that same mistake again. I also had been teaching Pilates and gotten to know so many women very intimately. You know, I taught private Pilates, so I heard their stories and saw the different kinds of marriages, saw the different types of women, all kinds of women. And it was really interesting for me. And I wanted to kind of create a character that's very relatable, that's highly flawed, and is the girl next door. And you know what you said is a really good statement. You know, how much is too much sex? How much is too much drinking? And in the end of the day, in my opinion, addiction is when it's causing you problems, when you don't feel good about it, when you're hurting other people with your addiction, or it's causing your self-esteem to go down. It's making you feel bad. You're apologizing for your behavior. You're justifying your behavior. Then in my opinion, it's a problem and time to sort of reflect on you know, what kind of changes could you make in your life. But I'm not, you know, this book isn't about judging people or about policing people's behaviors. I'm the child of an alcoholic drug addict, and I adored my dad. He struggled with addiction. And, you know, would I have preferred him not to have been an addict? Of course. Did it cause me trauma? Yes. But I think at the same time, it made me very empathetic to addiction, very understanding of what anybody who's the child of a drug addict, alcoholic, you know, what they've been through. But I knew that I married an alcoholic, and there was a reason why I married one. And I wanted to get to the bottom of that. And I figured there were a lot of other people out there. I didn't feel like there was a book that was light and interesting about a rehab experience. I did a lot of research for the book to make a very realistic therapeutic milieu for the whole rehab program to unfold. And I believe it really very, very well reflects what it's like to be in rehab. And I think we do have a lot of addiction right now in this world, and we're losing a lot of people to opiate addictions. And this book is very timely. It's also aligns with the Me Too movement and what sexual assault does to a woman, how that affects them and changes them, and how to unwind that low self-worth and pain that is caused from something like that, those experiences.
Yeah, and I mean, I read something that you said or wrote, and you said about you're always intrigued by the male and female sex drive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if a man goes around doing this, it's a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's studs.
They're a fun one and stuff. And yeah, so you said like writing the book was sort of exercising the sort of demons of your marriage, that fell apart, but also exploring this sort of question about the male. Did you find any answers yourself, or?
I actually
like there was a book my neighbor read when I was a kid. She always had it on the side, this lady. I still speak to her now sometimes when I come home. And she has this book, and it was just called All Men Are Bastards.
I'm sure as a kid when you saw that book, you were like, what? Why?
And then my friend's father used to always say, the book Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars.
Yeah.
He used to always say, women are from Venus, men are from Mars.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I think that what I found is women are very sexual. From my research from the book and talking to a lot of women, they have a different way of approaching sex and a different way of I think they tend to hide their behavior a little bit more than men, because boasting about it is not respect. It shows, like I said, it has connotations of you're a slut, you're loose, and nobody wants that. But I think women are more sexually free now, and it is more accepted. And like I said, I'm not against having a lot of sex with a lot of people. If you want to do that, do that. If it affects you and makes you feel badly about yourself, and it is a problem in your mind and your heart, then maybe take a look at your behavior and get a little help or talk to a therapist. It's really, when you want to be rigorously honest with yourself, if there's a little bit of an issue there. And women tend to, after a breakup, go around and sleep with people and get a little bit wild. But in the end of the day, I think women and men do want to find that special someone to share their life with, and be in a committed relationship. And not everybody's meant for that. Not everybody can do that. I just questioned all these things while I was writing the book, and wanted to find a balance of when a woman does enjoy sex and has a really wide variety of sexual partners, when is that a problem and when is it not a problem?
What's the root of that? Yeah. What's the root of that? Like trying to find. Is it like they're trying to get attention or love, or is it just because you enjoy it?
Right. Are they lashing out? Are they doing it because they're trying to get revenge on someone? Do they have self-hatred? Are they trying to prove a point that they're free and nobody can tell them what to do? And there's all kinds of reasons. I mean, I am a victim of sexual assault, so I wanted to see get to the bottom of what that did to me and how that affected my idea of sex and my image of myself. And as a woman, what did that do to my sexuality and my idea of that? And there are so many women who have been sexually assaulted, and it doesn't even matter what it is. And I learned that when I went through, there was a writer who shared a tweet, and it was a story where she was grabbed on a bus when she was like 16, and it really affected her. And she just asked other women to share, and women were tweeting every second. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I went through the feed, and there could be a very minor incident and it totally changes somebody. And it really doesn't matter what the experience is. If it had a very traumatic effect on you, then you need to look at that, because I think people justify, oh, it wasn't anything, or maybe I did say yes, or maybe, and I had suppressed a lot of what happened to me as a kid, and pushed it under, and until it kind of like bubbled up and became a problem for me. So, this book helped me heal a lot as well. Writing it was really therapeutic for me.
I'm sorry to hear about that, but not about the recovery, about you know.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
I mean, it happens to men as well, but it doesn't affect men in the same generally. Not,
Yeah.
Generally, men can brush it off because, like, it doesn't obviously maybe physically stronger, so they don't feel as threatened or something, or
right.
Like,
obviously, the whole Catholic Church situation. I mean, there's been so many people, men, affected by that, and and I do think it has traumatic effects on a man. And many men, by the way, have reached out to me, not just about their own experiences. And the shocking amount of men have written reviews about my book. Definitely wasn't my target audience, and has been such a blessing to me to have so many men read my book. And because you get into a woman's head, and I think it's really fascinating for a man to be able to get into a woman's head. And the way I write, very matter of fact and very blunt and very, how does a woman think about her body, about other women's bodies, about seeing how they see themselves when they look in a mirror, and how hard they are on themselves. But I do think there's men that have reached out to me about their own personal experiences or witnessing their mothers being abused by their fathers, and how that affected them, and how important this book has been to them. And it's, in all honesty, the messages I've received have been so poignant and touching. It has made this writing journey, difficult writing journey, very worthwhile for me, just because of my readers. I'm so grateful for them.
That's why I love talking to people like you, because you see the book or you see the cover, and then obviously people judge a book by its cover or by its genre, say I wouldn't read that. And like recently, since I've been interviewing different writers, I've read things that usually I wouldn't read. I've read like cyber fiction, early fiction and things, chick lit, anything really, because like good writing can be found in all different genres. It doesn't have to be genre specific.
And I love that. I love hearing that. I'm trying to do the same and branch out a little bit and read genres I normally wouldn't read.
And that's why you need to do like more, like lots of, the idea with the channel to get people on talking, because if people can see them and hear the stories and see who's written these books, and you can have it explained to them where they don't have to read, and then they can go, like I've seen it. I know people who've watched some of the videos and they've gone out and bought the book off the videos. And even if it might be with like a few, it might not be lots and lots because it's not a big channel, but it's still nice that somebody on the other side of the world is taking your book, and reading it. I actually wrote a quote down because there's lots of great, really beautiful writing in your book. So,
oh, thank you.
It's very like poetic, like lots of the people I speak to. I'm attracted to this sort of like really nice writing. I wrote one down. It says, "Into the promise of happiness, synchronizing the rhythm of our lives to the turning of the leaves and fall of the tides." Lots of it is really beautiful. Fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. I grew up in this beautiful place, very idyllic childhood in a small, sleepy beachy town with a little harbor and the Canada geese and the leaves and the fall. And I remember going on walks with my mom, and just the way she unwound when she was outside, and seeing the beautiful environment of where I grew up, because she was a single mom and really tightly wound and working really hard to make rent and all that. And I wanted to portray that peace that overcomes people when they're in some place that lets them to just be. And and take a breath. And that can be a variety of different things to different people. But for me, it was taking a walk outside with my mom, and in the fall, and the leaves turning, and the Canada geese, and the soft sort of ground cover, and the moist air. And it was very, and I'm so happy that you liked that line, because it was.
I love it when it's like you're sharing a piece of your soul, you know. And some people, they don't always say right, you know what I mean? But like, because they often overcomplicate it, or they think it's all, you know, about sounding clever or everything. This is obviously clever and well written, but you can tell there's real emotion in there, and it's a real piece of you. That's what I wanted to ask, like, how much of you is in these pages? You know, how much the character, like, even a name like Prudence Aldrich. Where does this name come from? Because I read that names are very important to you.
Yeah, it is. So the name Aldrich, my mom was married 3 times. My dad was married 4 times. So I've met a lot of the different characters of types of women and men. And my mom dated this guy. His name was Malcolm Aldrich, and I just really loved him. He was just so nice to me, and he gave me time. He gave me his, he talked to me. He was kind. He was just a really good person. And a long while after my mom and he broke up, he committed suicide. So that name is a tribute to him in a way. So that's where I got the name Aldrich. His name was Malcolm Aldrich. And the name Prudence, I have a bracelet that was my grandmother's that she got when she was in a wedding, a bridesmaid in a wedding. And all the names on it are very old fashioned: Mildred, Agnes, Prudence, and all these really, and my grandmother's name was Winifred. And it was just all these really classically old fashioned names. And I thought, here I'm going to have this character who's very timely, very of the moment, very sassy, very forthright, but I'm going to give her an extremely classic old fashioned name that is the polar opposite. And I remember an editor reading it and saying, well, you just have to change that name. It's just awful. And honestly, people love her name. And I stuck to my guns. I'm kind of a pushover, if you can believe it. I tend to just be like, okay. And it was the first time I really fought for something with the book. And I'm so glad that I kept her name, because I just love her name. And it's so, it really does suit her, you know?
And even if it didn't, it's a part of you, part of your story. So
yeah.
It's like you changing the name of a real person. It's, can't say,
right.
No.
Yeah. And I also,
you want to change her name, and you can't. That's her real name. She's like,
and looking up the name Prudence, and the way the mom had delivered Prudence in such a with the father cheating and a lot of the difficulties Prudence's mother was going through, and the definition of the name kind of suited that moment for the mom as well in the book. So I really I really love the name, and honestly, one of the hardest things for me is naming characters. It's a nightmare. As a matter of fact, Nick was named somebody else for the first 5 drafts, and then I knew it wasn't the right name, and it took me an entire night of just writing down names until I came up with Nick, and then I knew that's what it had to be when I named her her husband.
You know what your name means, Iriwn?
That's my ex-husband's name. And I decided, a lot of women change their name after they get divorced, but I have 3 sons and they have the same last name, and will always have the same last name. And I just want to have the same.
Do you know what it means though? Where it's from?
I think it's isn't it something about the sea or something?
No, it's from Ireland. Like it means ethyl wine, or eel for wine. Yeah.
Oh, really? I can't wait to tell my boys that.
Wild boar. Yeah.
I love it.
And wine means friend. So
I love it. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for telling me that.
I just know it because I used to have an Irish friend with this name. So
that's so neat.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
Neat.
So yeah. So what's your maiden name?
Oh, my maiden name is Kuhn, Kuhn. And it's of German descent. But my mother's side wasn't German. So, but you were asking me about how much of the book is my story. And I would say about 40% is based on my life, and a lot of the childhood scenes were very similar to my childhood. I had to step away and make it more interesting, and also not have it be my story because it wasn't my memoir. And I think writers do write what they know, and they write about people they've met. And then from there, the story grows and becomes something completely other than.
You won't say which 40%.
No, I mean, the number one question I have at book clubs is, what parts are true? And one of the things I really love to tell is because there's scenes in the book where I had editors say, well, that would never happen. That could never happen. My mother did tell my brother to take me into the garage and pull off my braces because she couldn't pay the orthodontist. And he went into the garage and he pulled my braces off with pliers. And that was back when they had the big metal bands all the way around your teeth. And a lot of people were, and in my mind, I thought, did that really happen? And I had to ask my brother, did you take, and he's like, yeah, I did. Because sometimes we might make things up in our head or have a distant memory or something.
It's like me with my sister. I have a totally different memory of childhood.
Yeah, you'll remember things completely. No, that was me, or no, that didn't happen. It was someone else, and so that scene really did happen. And I remember an editor saying, oh, well, I mean, no one's ever going to take their braces off with pliers. I just remember my mom, I remember telling her, oh, like I have a band that's loose. And my mom was like, well, we can't get that fixed because I can't afford to pay the orthodontist. Let's just take your braces off. Go take your sister in the garage.
Back in the day when people sewed up the holes in socks,
Yeah.
People used to sew that. They wouldn't sew a hole in a sock now. They just throw them away and buy some new.
No, it's so true. It's so true. When I went through my financial struggles with my kids after my divorce, I mean, if they lost a sweatshirt, I would just tell them, go to Lost and Found and just shop around there. Because we lived in an area where these kids had 50, 60 hoodies and they would just leave them out on the lunch table. And I was like, if it's been around for a while, just grab one out of Lost and Found. We couldn't afford to buy a new one.
You're from Were you in New York there?
I grew up in New York and I live in Los Angeles now. And I'm currently in Palm Springs, but just on a little long weekend. But I moved to Los Angeles when my third child was a baby. And so that's, but I'm definitely consider myself a New Yorker and have people say New York accent a little bit, little New York vibe to myself, more forthright, I guess, in the way I talk rather than the laid back LA lifestyle. But LA is my home.
I'm happy all the Americans can understand me now. I haven't really lived in England for about 12 years, yeah. And when
England's very near and dear to me.
But years ago, when I went to America, people thought I was like a foreigner because my accent was a lot stronger. My accent, and they just.
I'm struggling a tiny bit to understand you, so I'm kind of close to the camera. Everyone's probably like, "Why is she so close to the camera?" I'm like trying to hear you because I'm outside because I'm on a trip with friends and didn't want to tell them everybody get out of the house. I'm having an interview, so I went outside. My mom was the president of the British American Chamber of Commerce. And she was the first woman and served 2 terms. And then the Queen of England gave her a Commander of the British Empire medal. And that was a huge, huge honor, obviously. Okay, yeah. So I had the medal. I obviously have a letter that I think there was the Prime Minister at the time wrote my mom when she won and I framed the letter. But the medal was stolen from my house. And it said "For God and the Queen" on it. It was really cool. It was in this beautiful, beautiful box. And when I moved in with my boyfriend, he remodeled the house, and it was stolen by one of the workers who probably thought it had value. It really doesn't, obviously.
I'll try and get it back to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually. I've tried to call the consulate, and you got to go down the rabbit hole. And every time I attempt to get another one, I get distracted, and I never follow through on it. But I can get one. I have all the evidence. Obviously, they have her name in the records. But my mom passed away a long time ago, so I would like to have that medal, and it did mean a lot to me. So, but yeah, so the book is loosely based on my life, but what I was going to say is I had a great mom. So the mom in the book it was hard for me to write that she was such a terrible mom, because I had to tell myself, this isn't my story. Yeah. I have to make the story better. And it's better if the mom is absent and isn't there and isn't watching. And so
that's what lots of moms do, isn't it? They get divorced and then they go off with someone else, and then
right.
Children are a part of the husband.
Yeah, I was a latchkey child, and my mom did work, but she was a really good mom. And I did not make Prudence's mom very good. And I think in the very end, what I had Prudence discover is the real root of her problems was that her mom wasn't there for her. And her anger was really at her stepfather. And then in the very end, the anger and the real pain came from her mom. And that was a cathartic moment for her and the healing of her childhood trauma. So, I went to a retreat through the Meadows, and I give credit to all Pia Melody and all that in the book. But, and that was a sort of a mini rehab, and that you learned how they deal with childhood trauma, how they unwind it, and how they help you heal. And it was fascinating. And there were only 2 other people in my group. So I really was able to hear their stories and dig in. And it was and it was led by somebody who had been trained through the Meadows. So that's how, and I based all the rehab in the book on the Meadows, which is a very, they do a lot of work for people who are codependent and that kind of thing. So yeah, so it was really, I made it as realistic as possible.
Something like these, like childhood traumas are they're difficult for me to understand, because I didn't really have any, I was from a big family. People looked after me. Everything was okay. But I always think of good experiences. Yeah. And I think a little thing that can happen, that's great, can have a big impact on you. Yeah. So I went to a party once, and this weird guy with a big beard and a hat and big glasses. And I think he smoked lots of marijuana or something. It was like a pothead. I was about 6 or 7, and he just sat there for hours teaching me how to play chess. Yeah.
Aww.
I just really remember, and I think that had a real impact on me. That guy.
Remember that kindness. Remember, a child wants time. Mm-hmm. They really want time. They want an adult's time, and quality time is their love language. And he gave you his time.
Maybe because
I think that's great. I love that you have that memory.
But yeah, it's a great memory, and I just think, well, if that one little thing I remember it all these years later, affects me, then obviously if something traumatic happened, it would have to. You
would remember that as well.
Way, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, you also may be a genuinely happy person, and a person who sees things.
I'm a miserable bastard. Me. this is I'm typical I don't know. I've had everything in my life that's basically been good, and I still moan. I was born on a Wednesday though, so maybe that's why. Wednesday child is full of woe. Yeah,
that's so funny. Yeah. I think that really some people do harp on their childhoods and they drag out these problems and things that happen to them, and I do tend to try and focus on the positives and focus on the blessings. And there were, because my mom worked, and back then most moms weren't working where I grew up. It was more housewives, and so there were all these women who stepped up and helped to raise me. And so I felt like I had all these different moms who had a little influence on me and who I am as a woman and who I am as a mother. And I'm so grateful for them, and for them giving me their time when they had their own kids and were driving their own kids around, yeah, so a village of women helped to raise me, and I always am grateful for anyone that helped my boys and helped raise them, the coaches, the parents who offered to drive them home and had them over when I was, couldn't be there. Just there's so many great people out there, and yeah, I tend to
like
look more at the
someone
positive.
like you is taking bad experiences, yeah, and put it into your writing and kind of reflected on it and sort of exercise your demons in this way. So, some people, they something bad happens to them and they just dwell on it their whole lives and they don't really move on.
Yeah, and it immobilizes them. It
Yeah.
freezes them. It makes them unable or incapable of self-love, incapable of loving others or having joy. And that's very sad. And I hope my book could shed some light on how do you heal? How do you move forward? And you can't let your past define you and in a negative way, make it so that you can't live your life and be happy, because first of all, you were a child. So, you have to look at it that way. You're just an innocent child, and what happened, happened. And that's on the adults. And you can't hold that baggage and carry it around. And we all bring a lot with us from our childhood, and triggers and issues and things like that. And I think it's really important to come to grips with things and kind of let go of them and heal. You can't close the door on it, but you can accept it and move forward and be way happier as an adult, rather than lead a life of misery and not be able to love and not be able to give your heart to others and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope my book shed some light on that.
Yeah, that's what I love about writers, and that they take negatives and turn them into positives, and
Yeah.
But your history, you studied cinema in university, yeah?
Yes, I studied film. And
what do you mean studied cinema? What do you study for this? You study
so now the major's called something else. It's called film. But back then the department was merged with theater. So it was a theater cinema major, but I had nothing to do with the theater department. And Denison University actually has a lot of famous alumni. It's a very small college, liberal arts college in Ohio. I had a scholarship. I'm very grateful for the education I had. It was really important to my mom that my brother and I have a very, very good education. And I definitely got a lot out of being a film major. And this professor who ran the department, the cinema department, he encouraged me to write a screenplay, saw that I was hungry in writing, and the films that I was doing had stories that were kind of different. And I wrote the screenplay. He sent it to this arts program, and I ended up being accepted into a semester in New York with other artists who had submitted work, writers, filmmakers, journalists, just different types of artists. And I had such an incredible experience with so many talented people from all over the US that had submitted their work. And we lived in this rat infested, cockroach infested brownstone in Hell's Kitchen. And it was just a really great time for me to believe in my writing and see it. Wow, there's something there. I can tell a story. And the book actually springboarded from that screenplay that I wrote so many years ago. And I think back to what we were talking about, that people can influence you and change you. And this professor really changed me and had such a powerful effect on me as a writer, in the confidence of being a storyteller and how do you write a screenplay and how do you tell a story that's compelling. These writing retreats and writing courses are very expensive. Writers don't make much money for the most part. A tiny 1% might make a living off it. And so it's the people that professors and people from your past that have helped you along the way with your writing, with your journey, with your dream chasing, and encouraging you. I'm really grateful for all those people. But yeah, film major, we learned how to edit and splice, 8mm and 16mm film. I mean, it it was a lot. We studied Hitchcock, we studied filmmaking, we studied different cinematographers and producers and directors and genres of films. I loved film noir. It was one of my, the dark, the gloomy, and I refer to film noir, actually. Double Indemnity Heat is a line from Address the Color of the Sky. Double Indemnity is a film noir movie. Everything's sweaty, everything's hot, and it's very grim. Film noir movies are all very, it's like there's always a slow fan moving, and everybody's really sweaty and dark and gloomy. So that's from that line is from my days as studying cinema at Denison. So it's kind of funny that you brought that up.
Has anyone picked anything out of your book that you subconscious? Because I've said a few things to people, and they said, "Oh, well, I didn't do that on purpose," but then subconsciously they've written something down, and it's kind of revealed something about them.
I say everything that I've written in this book is very conscious.
Okay.
I did, like I said, I didn't expect men to read my book. That's been a very, very touching part of this journey that I've been on. I also didn't expect mothers and daughters to share the book. And that's been fun for me, that it's multi-generational, that it's a story that crosses over age barriers and genders. And I find that universal story that is so important, a story that is relatable to all walks of life, to all kinds of people. And look, the beginning is a little shocking, and some people won't get through that, and they'll just put the book down and think, oh, like you said, it's erotica, or it's, there is no real graphic sexual scenes in the book. The sex is not gratuitous. It's in the book. It's there to show the desperate state of the protagonist and why she had to go into rehab and unwind her childhood. But you have to get somebody to a state where they're desperate and they're checking in.
She's had sex on the plane, and then she's coming onto the driver on the way to the
right, yeah. But she's on her way to rehab. You have to show,
because I was like, what's she doing? Yes,
and then you're probably like, I don't want to read erotica. I didn't pick this book.
No, but it's quite like you said, even on the plane, it's quite subtle. It doesn't go into nails in the back. And then there's like sort of eye-rolling moments, like when she checks into the clinic and they sell her no sexual thoughts. It's like, how can you control that?
Really? No sexual thoughts? How are you going to, monitor that?
The sex addict having no sexual thoughts. So it was all like the humor and things like it's subtle. You know what I mean? So like the sex scenes, like you said, they're not like so graphic. So
no, and I try to keep a sense of humor with the book. I try to make people laugh in a way that, because it's a heavy subject, my writing style is a little bit lighter. When the girl's giving her a tour, she's watching her butt, move, and the girl up in front of her, and she's like, I bet guys, like to tap that ass or something like, just keeping it. This is her brain, the way Prudence is thinking, but you see the way she thinks change and evolve throughout the book as she's learning and growing and unwinding the damages of her childhood. Her thoughts change, her mindset changes. The other thing I addressed in the book, which I learned a lot about being a Pilates teacher, is how women are so hard on themselves. Men would die if they got into a woman's head. I mean, we beat ourselves up. We call ourselves fat. We tell we're disgusting. We're stupid. We missed a turn, you idiot. The way we talk to ourselves, the voices in our head, it's appalling. And I wanted to address that in the book, because if we were as mean to ourselves, we'd never let anyone else talk to us that way, but we're our own worst enemy. And Prudence is told she's not allowed to go to the gym because she thinks she's fat. And body dysmorphia is a real thing for women. They look in the mirror and the mirror is broken. They don't see what is really in front of them. They just pick apart their body, and it's sad. It's terrible. And self-love it's so important. And I'm not saying, be an egomaniac, but try to find the good things and focus on the positives and women are just very hard on themselves, you know?
Walk around with nice lighting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all about lighting, you know, like
All this.
dim and restaurants, low lighting. But no, I think that I wanted to touch on that as well. And Prudence, for her not to be able to go to the gym is traumatizing. And then at the same time, she's like, so then I can't scope out the guys in there working out, you know, what? And she forges friendships in rehab with many different characters. And it's interesting to see what are they in for. And she does have a slip up in rehab. And I finished the sequel. My agent's actually pitching it right now. And I take a few of the prime characters in rehab and I bring them to Los Angeles. And then there's a big funeral because somebody does commit suicide in the book. I go back into that friendship in the second book and develop that a little bit more and get into more details about that. So, and there's a funeral in the very end of the second book. But Prudence is faced with a lot of things when she gets out of rehab. And one of them is to mend her relationship with her son. And a lot of mommy guilt's a real thing here on Mother's Day. And we're having this interview. And I want to touch on how mothers feel and you know, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. You have a child, there's no manuals. I mean, there's books and whatever, but you know, you're just kind of thrown into it and you do your best. But you know, Prudence has done some damage, but her son loves her and he's a very genuinely heartfelt character. And I get into a little more about how he is affected by her addiction in the second book. You know, and how she faces her life with the new tools that she has. I'm hoping it gets picked up. It's a very tough industry, publishing. Would
you self-publish if it didn't get picked up?
So I've talked to my agent about possibly just going with a small press. My goal at this point is to not pay to have it published. I feel as though I've at least earned that honor. But you never know. I mean, I have a friend, Sandy Barker, who's written romance novels. She indie published the first book and signed with HarperCollins imprint and has a 4-book deal and had her indie published book picked up and re-released. That is a dream come true for me. And my agent often tells me, don't change the cover because when your book gets picked up, they'll just change the cover again. But as I mentioned, the covers caused me some problems. And so I want to be able to increase my reader market through Amazon advertising. And at this point, I can't advertise. So, and the more books I sell, the more attention I'll get from publishers. So I'm going to go ahead and change the cover. I'm in the process of working with a designer.
To know what would you have on the cover?
Well, I'm sorry, there's a plane going over. It's been really interesting. This house I'm renting, there's a lot of military Air Force jets. It's really cool. You can see them flying and spinning. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's difficult to know what you would put on the cover.
You know, I don't want it to look like a romance novel. This is a kind of a serious story. I mean, it's I want it to be timely and align with a lot of the covers out there. But I look at a book called A Little Life, for example, had a sort of an odd cover, and they just recently recovered it with just A Little Life. It doesn't really tell you what the story is about at all. I mean, before it was sort of a kind of a screaming man's face. I mean, you couldn't really tell. And it's a really great book that I recently finished. You know, I want the cover to be appealing and aesthetically pleasing, but also not trick the reader into thinking this is a romance novel. But at the same time,
I read
a heavy book. Do you think it's a heavy read? I mean, obviously I'm the writer.
No,
so
I think it's a heavy theme. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heavy theme. Yeah.
But not a heavy read, because you know, which is great. You know, it's kind of like sometimes if it's a heavy theme and a heavy read, it's like, oh, you know, you can't be bothered after a page or two. But because it's very light in moments and, you know, humorous, like you said, and it's got beauty to it, and that, then it's a heavy theme but addressed in like a lighter way.
when you're chasing a dream, and in my life, I have never wanted something so badly and worked so hard for something that is incredibly difficult to achieve. And that is to get a publishing deal. And my book's won 7 awards. It has 100, I think I'm up to 167 reviews on Amazon, 4.8-star reader rating. All it looks like is 5 stars. And that's unbelievable. If you're going to be a writer, you better have a thick skin, because you're putting yourself out there, and there's going to be people that aren't going to like your work. And that's okay. Not everyone's going to like what you do. Not everyone's going to think what you write is great. And what I write isn't for everyone. So that's okay. But the readers that have read it feel compelled to write a review. And the reviews they're not just little snippets. They're these long reviews that are just so beautifully written. I mean, I have been blown away by the reviews. And they speak for me. I always tell people, you want to find out about my book, read some of the reviews. But honestly, my dream is to make a living as a writer, and I'm determined to do that. And I'm working really hard to do that. And I'm not going to give up. And my agent is working hard to get me a publishing deal. And it is difficult to get a sequel picked up, but it's not impossible. So, and the sequel's standalone. You don't have to have read A Just Color of the Sky to read it. So I'm hopeful, but I've been blown away by how hard this industry is. Reese Witherspoon has changed the playing field so much, the way she's snatching up film rights, making turning books into films and miniseries. And as you know, I did have a film deal on my book, and it was an option, and the option expired, but my book reads like a movie, and it would make a great Netflix miniseries. And I'm still hopeful it will get made into a film, and I think it would be a great one. I really do. And the story's so timely and relatable.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the good thing about you is you look great, you speak great, you write great, and you talk great.
You.
So you should be.
Thank you. Thank you. I really hope that I can inspire other writers, that I can mentor other writers, that I can help people understand that you can chase this dream. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what point you are in your life. It's never too late to do something that you've always wanted to do. And the only thing stopping us is fear. We just have to get rid of that fear of putting our work out there and being critiqued. And, like I said, some people aren't going to like your work. You just have to deal with it. I just got a very tough critique from my agent on my 3rd manuscript, and it could have crushed a lot of people. I mean, he said, if I hadn't been representing you, it would have been a hard no. But he did say, I think that it's got good bones. It needs work. And I harped on the good things he said. My writing's improved. He could definitely see how my writing's become evolving and growing. And I love hearing that. So I'm going to go back and fix it and rewrite it. And I'm not going to submit it again until I know it's 100% ready to go. But you're going to take the hits, and you just have to do that. So I'm really grateful that you had me on your show.
Oh, brilliant. Been lovely chatting to you. Yeah.
Oh, it was so
nice.
fun. Yeah. I can't wait to meet you in LA when you come stay with me.
Definitely, I'll be there. Me, you, David Hayter. And
yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh, I would love to.
The next X-Men film.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love that. And thank you again for having me on the show. And hopefully I can be on again with my next book.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll do it again.
Thank you. You're very handsome. I was like, whoa. I'm like, he's hot. That's Prudence Aldrich talking.
I'm just gonna put that bit as a clip.
Yeah. He's hot. I was like, damn, fire's coming out of your head. I was like, but that's Prudence Aldrich, not me. Yeah. I didn't say that.
I like Prudence Aldrich, so.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day or night. Cheers. Well, I got my cocktail.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Yay. Perfect. Yay. All right. Awesome.
Ciao.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
day. Thank you. Cheers.